Welcome back to another episode of T-Shirt Talks. Today we have the pleasure of introducing a multi-talented guest who is not only a distinguished artist and photographer, but also a sommelier.
You got it.
Thank
That's
you.
How you say it.
Rock climber, devoted father, loving husband to one of our team members, Haley. His journey is a testament to taking bold leaps of faith and achieving remarkable success. Born in Oklahoma, but having chosen Las Vegas as his home for the last 15 years, our guest's work is deeply rooted in his own experiences, testing limits, and living life to the fullest, with the intention of his art being motivating others to live inspired. Before he ventured into the world of art and photography, he began as a teacher, but the call of creativity proved irresistible, and he took a monumental chance on himself. Without the backing of investors, he opened his very own gallery in Summerlin over 12 years ago. What's even more astonishing is that his dedication and talent has not gone unnoticed. His patrons include CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, professional athletes, and is in residences on 5 different continents. His story is one of passion, determination, and the audacity to follow one's dreams. Without further ado, welcome, Bobby Wheat.
Wow.
Welcome.
Thanks, guys. That was amazing.
We're just going to break that clip and
I know.
replay that the entire
We'll
time,
see
man.
you guys later.
That's it.
I feel great about myself. Did you write that?
Me and ChatGPT.
Oh my gosh.
Wrote it
amazing.
together.
Well,
Yes.
great job.
Thank you.
Tati and Chat.
Exactly.
And AI.
That's awesome.
So let's start at the beginning.
All
Bobby.
right. Sounds good.
Describe 10-year-old Bobby in Oklahoma.
Oh, gosh. I can't even remember back. I'm 41 now, so it's like a long time ago. I was a pretty unassuming, quiet kid, not much to speak of. Most of the time, you wouldn't notice me if I were in a room full of people. I loved playing baseball, and that's what I wanted to do. That was my dream, was to grow up and be a pro baseball player. But looking back now, I think I was just too lazy, wasn't willing to put in the kind of work that you need to put in to be a professional athlete. So I blamed it on all kinds of stuff, when I ended up quitting. But that's really what it boils down to. But yeah, I don't know. I was just a pretty quiet kid. Always did pretty well in school, and taking photographs kind of grabbed hold of me at a young age. I had family who lived out west, and so when we'd come out and visit them, I was kind of enamored with the big, grandiose landscapes. Having been from Oklahoma, it's pretty flat and boring. So, I'd bring along those little digital cameras, which apparently are coming back now. My daughter brought one home yesterday, and I was like, oh my God, that's what I learned on. So,
Like the little disposable film. Yes.
Yeah.
No, those are all and very expensive now.
I know. And now you mail them in and they send you back digital copies. So we would go to Walgreens or whatever the store was, and you'd process them and they'd give you these little 4x6 photographs.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how my career began, I guess.
Do you still have any of those photos?
I might somewhere. They're probably at my parents' house in a box or something like that.
That would be kind of cool.
But yeah, I would love to see them if they're still out there.
Put them on display at the gallery. That'd be awesome.
Well, from this to this, you go back.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be really cool. I'll give my parents a call and see.
So how did the transition, because in high school is when you met Haley, your wife, and then you went to college at University of Oklahoma?
Oh, gosh. No. Oklahoma, well, I went to 8 different colleges. Graduated from one that I don't even know if still exists. I hope it does. I'm sure it does. But yeah, I went to Oklahoma State for 2 years. Just didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. And if I'm not gung-ho about it, I won't put a whole lot of effort into it. That's always been a character flaw. So I'll go all out for it if I have a passion for it. But especially back then, again, laziness, just didn't know what I wanted to do and did so terribly that I ended up having to move out of Stillwater back to Oklahoma City and get a job and go to a college that I could afford. And ended up quitting that. And, I took a very unconventional path. I would not advise it for anybody.
I thought you bring up childhood trauma. Appreciate that. But
I know, sorry.
Don't do what Bobby did, kids. Eventually graduated from a small online school out of Arizona called Prescott College. But I took classes from, I think, literally 5 different colleges. So.
And what was your degree in at the end?
Education was my final with a minor, I think, in finance, which is so weird. But yeah. I think I had accumulated enough credits that I was like, okay, I'll just do the minor. I needed to take X amount of classes to finish that. So, so elementary education, I was a teacher for 6 years and loved that job. I really did. But it's like you said in your very eloquent bio, the creative side is what I'm really passionate about, and ended up taking a risk on that, and it worked out. So,
yeah, that's so because it's so funny because I met you when you were like, Bobby, you had the gallery. I never would have guessed that you were elementary. I could see high school. I think you do really well in high school. Yeah. But like, you taught 4th grade for a while, right?
Yeah, 4th grade was
Which
most
is
of the
just so funny to me because you are tough.
Yeah.
With very high standards. But you did really well.
Yeah. I mean, I treated them like adults. So if they wanted negative attention, the whole class gave them negative attention, which I feel like people would question that. I'd probably get canceled in this day and age. But if my kids still come visit me, I love it. Yeah. They've changed a lot more than I have in those last however many years. And so it takes a few minutes to recognize them. But yeah, I treated them like adults, and they took to it really well. I was a very hard teacher, but the kids ended up realizing that it wasn't because I was trying to be mean. It was just because, hey, the world's not your friend either. And if you can get used to, thick skin and thinking about how you act at a young age, I think it serves you well for the rest of your life. So that's how I treated them.
Yeah.
But, absolutely.
No, I agree.
We're funny with Ellie right now, 4th grade in Bobby's class.
Well, she's so good.
She is good.
I don't think Bobby would. Yeah, but she would maybe cry. Like, she's
they cried, especially the first few weeks when I was setting the stage. Like, I remember one of my favorite kids I've ever had. His name was Luke. His mom called me like a weekend. She was like, I don't think my son can handle your class. I was like, hold on. I was like, the first 2 weeks are really hard. I just have to let them know. Like, this will fly, this won't fly. And then they know how to act at that point. Yeah. And it turns out, like I said, I ended up, I think, moving forward with that class. And so I had them 2 years in a row. Okay. And it was, like I said, he was one of my favorites, but he had a hard time at first. So
poor Ellie. She comes home crying.
Yeah.
Okay. So what kind of made you take that leap from teaching to I'm going to bet on myself and I'm going to open a gallery of like no investors, no backing, all your own work, kind of what?
So it was kind of a perfect storm. I was one of the youngest guys on staff at Givens Elementary is where I was teaching for all of my time here in Vegas. And so every year, this was like in the low point of the recession. So it was like 2009, 10, and 11, I believe. Okay. And so every year was budget cuts, and there was always this threat of, hey, Bobby, we love having you. Just being honest, we don't know if there's going to be a position for you next year because it was all seniority based. Mm-hmm. And so it got to a point where I was like, if I'm going to be this stressed, making $35,000 a year, I'm just going to go into business for myself, Yeah. It's and so in late 2010, this new development called Tivoli Village was opening. And they were offering these crazy cheap deals on temp leases. And so Haley is kind of the one my wife is kind of the one who headed that whole effort up and was like, hey, we need to do it now or never. You're good at this. It's what you love. It's what you want to do. And so we put together our life savings and put it into this little temp lease space and roll the dice, and it worked out. So that's what I've done full time ever since.
Yeah. And
kind of crazy.
Because starting a business is not easy.
Oh, God. No. If I would have known then what I know now, I don't know if I would have done it. It was just kind of one of those into the unknown things. Like, let's do it. I was 28 years old. Haley was 27 at the time. We did have a child, so we did have, the scary part of we've got somebody else depending on us, but we've always kind of gone for it. When we got married young. People told us we were crazy. We moved away, because we wanted to do our own thing. People told us we were crazy. So our whole life has kind of been these leaps with people telling us we're crazy.
Yeah. And how do you think what was one of the biggest challenges? Because looking back, and how did you overcome that challenge?
Oh God, everything is a challenge when you're opening a business. I had no clue what I was doing. I definitely didn't know how to hobnob with rich people are the people that it turns out are going to be buying our work. And so it was like all trial and error. We were barely scraping by for the first couple of years. But thankfully we had some patrons who came along and kind of saw the heart and the authenticity behind what we were doing. And they really helped keep the gallery afloat through their purchases of the art until we built a following. When I opened, I only had 25 images. So that was a challenge. It was like, if you like, I hope you find something you like and just 25 images, because that's all I have. And so that was a challenge, building out the space and just watching this money drain out of your bank account to where you literally have nothing. I mean, we had like $2,000 to our name when we finally opened doors. And I remember the first day we opened doors, and one of our hanging displays just came crashing down off the wall. Like, almost started crying. I'm just like, what did I get myself into? Like, the worst idea ever. But again, I don't know how to explain how you get through that first part, because you're just treading water, you're gasping for air. But eventually, hopefully confidence in what you're doing, and you develop kind of an immunity to people coming in and making fun of you and basically waiting for you to fail, because it's very probable that you're going to fail. It's hard. It's kind of brutal. And so that's the biggest challenge, is just you're out in a place where you don't know what you're doing. I mean, you're completely vulnerable. You've taken this choice to put yourself out there. Everybody's telling you you're stupid for doing it. And it is kind of stupid for doing it until you are willing to show people, no, I'm convicted enough to see this through. And it's been the biggest learning experience in my entire life. So no school, no nothing has been more instrumental than just facing failure day after day after day and experiencing it sometimes day after day. But you hold on to these tiny little victories that keep you afloat until you can build a metaphorical raft, or whatever you want to call it, and actually start getting somewhere. So it's a crazy process for sure.
I think it's twofold too, because your art obviously is incredible. Like, the art itself is amazing, but it's that there's a story with it, right? So I think from outside perspective, what kind of sets your business and idea apart is it's not just, oh, here's pretty art. It's about the lifestyle. It's about it's seeing and experiencing new things. It's about going out of your comfort zone. Like, there's a story with the art, which I think is what makes it the inspiring part.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think great art that's all it is telling a story. Yeah. And you see in the art world, people latching onto these fads, what's selling, and you'll start to see people mimic it over and over again. And, when I first started, it was all landscapes, and I was still very much in a mimicking phase of my career, which is how everybody starts out. But then the general public is going to call you out on that when you put yourself out there in a public space. And they did, they would say, oh, this looks like X artist, or this looks like, Y artist. And at first I got really offensive, and then finally, you got to say, well, if a lot of people are saying this, maybe there's some truth to it. So I had to take a good, long, hard look at my work and what I was doing and what I brought to the table. And I think that's when the breakthroughs start, when you start to be honest with your shortcomings and where it might be shallow. And then you start to tie your own story. And, so I went a completely different direction with film negatives and started photographing new material, and all that stuff was born out of rejection and, a really hard look at what I was producing and creating, and having to say, if I want to bring something new to the art world, I've got to start pushing the boundaries a little bit. So, and I think that's where great art comes from, is it makes obvious things that might not be so obvious to the rest of the world. So,
and now you have your own copycats.
I do, yeah, which is kind of cool.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
And what influence do you think, I think kind of it's two. So the influence of one having a very strong and dependable partner helped influence your career, but also mentors and other people that have helped you. Like, how has that influenced your business? And
oh gosh, it's been everything. Like Mike has been a huge influence and mentor to me, especially from a business standpoint. I remember a few years ago, still remember the conversation. I'll probably always remember it. But, Mike's always been a guy who has had a good handle on how to make strides forward in the business world. And that's something that does not come easily for me. The creative side is very natural. And so I remember Mike just called me out on it a few years ago. And he was like, why would you expect to grow in your business? And he said, you don't have a coach, you don't read books. So you're essentially going trial and error based on your own experience and knowledge. And it's basically saying you're arrogant and you think you can figure it all out on your own. And I had to admit, I can't. There's a lot of people out there with amazing knowledge and experience, and it's for the most part free information, and I'm rejecting it out of arrogance, and ego. I didn't realize that at the time, but in retrospect, as I've looked back on it. And so I started reading books and trying to learn from people who were smarter than me, and it's made astronomical benefits in my career, especially from a business standpoint. So,
in Bobby fashion, by consuming books, Bobby has probably read more books in the last 5 years than I've read in 20 years. So,
yeah, maybe so. I don't know, but
I admire that in you, man. Like when you commit to something, like you said earlier, like you go all in, and the fun part about it is you don't just consume, but you apply. And I think that's where you ultimately see the growth. And there's always going to be that trial and error element still in there.
Sure.
But your ability to apply information, I think, is amazing.
Yep. Yeah, thank you.
well, I think kind of going off of that too. So the next question was like, what advice would you give someone trying to start something in the creative field? But again, from an outside perspective, I think a trait that you have that I'm sure, and I think Dad, like people that are successful are just able to give 110% and like truly give 110%. And I mean, I think you do that for sure with anything that you've decided you want to do, 110, nothing less. And like people will say that like, oh, give 100%, but not actually follow through or be up late at night, wake up early, like do what has to be done.
Yeah.
So what do you think from your perspective would be like one of the biggest piece of advice to give someone?
I think that's a big part of it, but I think a big part of being able to give 100% is making sure that you're putting yourself in a situation where you have the energy and the resources to give that. I mean, if you are, especially to a young person, the biggest advice I would give is save your money and don't spend it on trying to impress people with, depreciable assets. And that sounds like finance mumbo jumbo. But I mean, if you're a slave to a car payment because you want to look cool, I mean, you got to make that $800,000, $900,000 a month now extra on top of what you're doing for everything else for your housing. That's a lot of effort. That could be going into buying gear if you're a musician or supplies if you're an artist, or travel if you're you want to be a journal or whatever in the world it could be. Investing in yourself and your skill sets is a big part of it. And just saying no to everything else, especially in the early years, I think is a huge part of it. And then just putting in the work. It's you mentioned earlier that it's crazy scaling the side of a cliff, but it's not that crazy if you put in the work. I've spent countless hours at the climbing gym, perfecting techniques and not perfecting, but working on techniques to be able to put myself in a situation where I know my body is strong enough to handle certain things. And, so when I'm executing in a real life situation on real rock, all I'm doing is drawing from the experience of the work that I put in the gym. And so there's something to be said for just training and putting most of your effort into your training. So, and most people are just going to only see the performance and they'll say that's crazy. But that's how I would feel speaking to a conference full of people is terrifying to me because I don't train myself in public speaking. I mean, that's how I feel getting on a basketball court, you know, even in a high school situation. It's terrifying to me because I haven't trained in that realm.
Yeah.
But when you train in that realm and put in the effort and the training, it's I think you're able to produce results in the real world that seem impossible to other people.
You know, one of my coaches, Todd Duncan, he talked about the law of the dress rehearsal. And he gives the example. He's like, you know, a football team, they play for 60 minutes on Sunday, but yet they've got 40 hours worth of practice during the week, you know. And I think oftentimes with a lot of people, especially people coming up, it's like, you just have to do the reps. You know, it's like, yeah, you start off with $2,000 in your pocket. You start off taking your first, you know, commission only job. And it's not because, you know, there's something behind you. You just have to take that chance. But as you take that chance, you still practice every day. You're still doing those things. You got to, you said, get better, perfect, you know, continue to evolve. And I feel like that gets lost on a lot of people now where they see Instagram, they see TikTok, they see the result, but it's like, yeah, I'm an overnight success 30 years in the making. You know, and that's in the reality of it, man.
Yeah. So, and I think you have, as a result of that, playing off the social media stuff, it's like you have people who are expending all their resources to look good on the gram or whatever, and they're just bad investments, you know.
Absolutely.
It's the clothes or the what.
The Rolls is not a good investment?
Yeah. I mean, it is maybe
well, that
down
one
the road.
might be.
The Rolls might be. I don't know.
No, it's hilarious.
One of my favorite stories is Chad Ochocinco when he went on a podcast and was like, no, all my jewelry, Claire's. He goes, what time is it? Someone told him that was free. I don't need a watch to tell me that. And his whole thing is either like the girls know that I play football, and if they want to look up my net worth, they can and see that I got it. I don't need a chain to tell people that I got it. Like, I'm not wasting my money. It's Claire's.
Yeah.
And that's what he would.
I remember when he was talking about driving the Prius. I love it. That was so cool I remember my brother texted me that, and I thought it was just so cool for a professional athlete to have that perspective. So.
Yeah.
It's definitely not the norm. I remember on Hard Knocks, he went into Claire's and he's buying these freaking earrings,
amazing.
Man. That's his real life. He's living it out.
And there's a time and a place to splurge. I'm not saying, you know, put back every penny. And I also think it's a huge advantage to learn to be generous from a young age, because people will reciprocate that. It's just kind of a law of whether you want to call it the universe or, you know, a golden rule of the Bible. It's like treating other people as you want to be treated. They will treat you in the same way that you treat them. And if you're a generous person, you're going to see that. If you're helping other people get where they want to go, you're going to see people helping you to get where you want to go. So there is a time to splurge and to be generous and even to have fun with your money, but especially at a young age when you're trying to get your feet under you, invest in your long-term skill sets. So.
Absolutely.
And kind of going off the generosity, so you were a part of a mentorship program where you were the mentor this last year for high school. What did that experience teach you, either about life or about the gallery? Like what did you kind of take away from that?
Yeah, so that was with Cristo Rey, and we sponsored they have like this work study program where essentially it's not a private school, but it's like their students earn their tuition by doing these work study programs. And so you essentially sponsor a student. And we had Isabella. She was awesome. And she came in and kind of learned that her skill set, she had a little bit of creativity, and she was also very good at task-oriented stuff, which I'm not good at. And so we paid X amount per month, and that helped to front her tuition. And she came and did a ton of amazing stuff for the gallery. So it's anytime you get to be in relationship with people who you would never really cross paths with, you're just going to learn a ton about how great people are, you know, outside of your circle, how great people are in a completely different side of life that you've ever seen, not a better, not a worse side, just a different place. And there's just so much to learn from anybody who's trying to make their way in the world, you know, in whatever way they can. And one of the things that I've learned not only from that experience, but just being in contact with people who you can just see have this drive and this desire to be something great, and they come into the gallery all the time and they think it's just like this glorious, oh, you made it. And it's like, no, I haven't made it. Like I got to make it tomorrow. I got to make it the next day. But you get where they're coming from, and you see, that kind of light go on in their head of what they could be. And so I try to be as encouraging to people like that as humanly possible. And I'll roll with people like that till the wheels fall off. If you have that, that ambition to just do the most with your life, I think those are the true salt of the earth people. And I think those are the best kind of people for me to be around. So
yeah. And so there's a lot of different definitions of success for
Mm-hmm.
you. What is kind of your definition for your life of success? Not necessarily like, oh, I made it, like you said, but kind of what is that definition for you?
I think the main one is pretty simple. It's probably, for me, I define it as pushing through a goal or pushing through obstacles to realize a goal. And that could be big or small. It could be long-term or near-term. But I think that is a big part of feeling successful to me. And most of the time it comes with just being willing to confront the probability of failure and go through it. And eventually, you do it strategically. You do something that at the time that when you first began, you thought was impossible. So that's why I love climbing so much, because literally 95% of the time you're falling at the gym. So you're falling on a rope, but most of the time you're training on things that are way too hard for you. And eventually you build up strength and resistance. Your body learns how to deal and manage with those stressors, and you're able to send or complete a climb that at one time, like, there's no way I could have done it. So all that to say, I think mainly pushing through obstacles to realize a goal.
No, and I said it earlier, I think your ability to do that is phenomenal. I think about, 2020 when you pick up a golf club for the first time in however many years, and within a few months you break 80, or with wine, just different things. I mean,
sure.
And I think that's important for people to realize is that, there's success in the gallery for sure. Like that's your baby, you birth that, you do that. But all of those other little things that are not little, but all the other little accomplishments you have all play into the story of the gallery. So can you just share a little bit about how some of those elements, whether it's golf or wine or climbing, how that plays into the bigger picture of the story of the gallery?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I think I am a big proponent, and like our passions, what we gravitate towards naturally are what make us unique as human beings. And so I think when you have a natural tendency to want to do something, or you're inspired by seeing somebody else do something well, I think you should pay attention to those things. And then the only thing separating from you from that dream or that, admiration is just the work that you put in on a daily basis. And so for me, it's not like some magical thing. Like I saw this documentary on these 4 people who were taking their master sommelier exams. And I was just fascinated by it. And how could people that, apply discipline to achieve this goal in this way? And so that was one of the first times in my life I was like, I'm just going to start studying for this and see where it goes. And so I took time to study every day and eventually passed the SOM exam, not the master exam, but the certified exam. And golf, again, it was one of those things I just thought was cool. And so I wanted to be a better golfer. So it just comes with putting in work. Golf is on a level of its own, though, man. It's not just something you can just grind yourself to being good at. It's like, it's an expensive entry, and it's like you got to be very intentional about not practicing in bad ways. Like at the climbing gym, I can just go and grind my way up the wall enough times, and eventually my arms and fingers will be strong enough to do the hardest stuff. You can't do that with golf. So, but climbing's the same way. And these are things I've had, for whatever reason, a natural gravitation towards. And so I pursue them and then tie them into my story, So, and I found ways to tie them into my main passion in life, which is obviously creating works of art that tell a story. So
that's awesome.
And so what do you think kind of in the stories that you tell and in the experiences you had, what's like a major milestone or turning point for you in your career where you're like, yeah, I can feel this shift, or, oh yeah, like I'm not treading water, or no, this brought this sort of notoriety to the gallery. Like what, or
Sure.
even yourself, like personally, you felt a shift within yourself. Like what?
Yeah, that's a great question. There have been multiple along the way, and there's never a point where you're like, oh, I'm not treading water finally. It's it will feel like that. Yeah, it's, I mean, at least in my...
I'm with you, man. I'm with you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think everybody experiences that. You'll have moments where the results are just amazing. You know, whether it's the money you make or the recognition, or you get published in X magazine or whatever. And there have been things along the way that have been like, oh, this is amazing. You know, I think one of them was when the Museum of Modern Art like shared one of my posts on Instagram. I was like, what in the hell? That's crazy. That's cool. Like today, even like one of my favorite baseball players followed me on Instagram. I'm like, why? But it's cool. I'm happy you did it. And then you hit a sales figure that you never thought you'd hit. And so those have been some of the things that like the mountaintop experience, but, success is not the mountaintops. It is the navigating your ways, is finding ways not to self-destruct in the valleys, I think, is what I've learned more than anything. And the valley is coming. It's always going to come. 2020 through 2022, early part of 2023, were like the best sales streak I've ever had. And then the second quarter of this year, like something just changed, and it felt like the bottom had just fallen out. And so that was one of those things where it's just a reminder, you're never in the clear. You got to find ways to reinvent. You got to find ways to make yourself relevant. And I still don't know what caused it. And thankfully, we were able to shift some things up with our marketing and the type of work that we're putting out, and get back in front of people, and we're back in a good place now. But I mean, even as recently as this year, I've learned that you're never out of the woods. You constantly have to keep striving to get better. And what I've also learned through that, because of that, is I have to separate myself from my results. Results are something I have to get, but I'm not defined by my results. Sometimes there are just going to be things that happen outside of my control that will dictate, and markets fluctuate and things like that. So I have to continue to do things every day that make me feel like I'm winning, make me feel like I am proud of myself, that I like myself. And that way, the roller coaster of the business world doesn't seem so daunting and nauseating, because it's crazy. I'm sure you've experienced it too.
No, that's, I think, one of the biggest things that we've learned over the last year and a half is the focus on activity versus results. And,
yes.
And
you're so good.
But I mean, that's the reality of it, is like your success, your daily success rhythm has to be focused on what activities what's my objective, and how much of that did I ultimately achieve? Because we know the results ultimately will come, but we don't always have direct control over that. Mm-hmm. So I think for us, that's been the biggest thing, is just what are the activities? And I joke, we're doing more today than we ever have in 23 years of business. And we're not necessarily getting the result, but I know if we can continue to do these things as markets shift, like we're going to grow exponentially, because we're getting better at more things. But yeah, separating yourself from the result is a requirement. Otherwise, you will freaking drive yourself insane.
Yeah, and I have driven myself. I mean, there's like literally nights on end where you can't go to sleep, because you're like, you go down the rabbit hole of, oh God, like if this continues, we're losing this much money every month, and this is how long. You start plotting it out, and you're like, this is not healthy.
I'm going to start driving Uber all of a sudden.
Exactly.
Like, oh my goodness.
And you can't even do that because Uber is expensive.
Exactly.
I'm going to get one of those little scooters.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's hilarious.
No, what I've kind of learned by being because I'm still pretty young, and I never thought I'd be in the...
You're a quarter century old now, let's just be honest.
That's still very young. And I never thought that I'd be in spaces with entrepreneurs, with business people. I always thought I'd be more in the nonprofit sector. However, I do love this world, and I've learned a lot from this world. And one of the big things is these people that you see that are now multimillionaires, flying jets, like their highs are very high, but their lows are insane. Like lawyers on retention, getting sued all the time, bankruptcy, like
Yeah.
having the same conversations of, I don't know if we're going to make it next month, like the
Sure.
same kind of things. And so while it looks great on the outside,
Yeah.
everyone, no matter your scale, is overcoming something. And it's whether or not you overcome that. It's whether or not you keep going or you don't.
Yeah.
And that's really the only difference.
Yep, for sure. And I think that's why, like, that's exactly right. And I think that's why making sure that you're kind of being selfish with your own image of yourself on a daily basis is like top priority. I think it's better for everybody around. It's better for my wife. It's better for my daughter. I know that if I wake up and I go to the gym or I get a run in, I'm going to feel like I started the day with a win. And so that is a non-negotiable for me. And so, that allows me to have a positive self-image, and it allows me to go through the day without being bitter. I was thinking this on my run today. I was listening to a book, and this thought that popped into my head. You mentioned like big businessmen and lawyers and things like that. And those things have a tendency to corrupt you as well. Just because you're getting great results, it doesn't mean you're in a great place. And I even think about like professional athletes, how ego is such a big thing. And, if ego is kind of like the underlying thing, then the only thing that separates you from ego, like right on the other side of ego, is victimhood. And all it takes is a bad circumstance. If there's ego involved, it's like, I'm so great, something bad happens, then it's not your fault, right? It's like, oh, I'm so great, this only happened because something else caused it. And I think if you can be in a place where you suppress ego, you're doing activities every single day to have a positive self-image, then you begin to offer positivity to other people, even through bad circumstances, because the lows are extremely low, when you're self-employed. So again, all goes back to detaching yourself from the circumstances and the results at hand.
I was at a conference in July, and it was 4 days, and one speaker, which is one of my favorite things about the event, is that one guy comes up, gives 4 days worth of information, but the reoccurring theme, he said, the reason that most people lack results is because of ego. It's like you won't do the things that are required for success. And like you said, on the other side of ego is going victim and just blaming everybody else and always pointing the fingers. And he says you wake up every day and you go into your office, and the first thing you do is you put your ego in the drawer, and then you get to work.
Yep.
And that's where you see results.
Yep. So results and fruitful relationships, I think it's hard to have positive relationships with people in general if ego is in the way, So I think it's just such a crucial thing to put the ego in the drawer in all facets of life.
100%.
So kind of going off of that, what are 3 tangible habits that you would recommend to someone who's wanting to get in a business or is in business, like 3 things that you should do every day to prepare yourself for success or prepare yourself for that grind?
So I think exercise is a huge part of it. It's just there's so many studies that have proven that depression and all those things that you're going to battle along the way, they just are drastically reduced, the odds of them, when you have a healthy physical regimen every single day. I think the second one is just practice saying it's my fault, even if it's not your fault.
Absolutely.
Take responsibility for it. Because even if you don't control the circumstances, if you say it's my fault, or if you at least take personal responsibility, you at least can control the outcome of the circumstance. And then third, I think it's like what you said, overnight success is a myth. It's most overnight successes are 30 years in the making. And so if you can love the process, learn to love the putting in the work every day, eventually you're going to be places that you never thought you'd go, but you have to love putting in the work every day. So
that's why I love Kobe Bryant. Nobody loved doing the work more than Kobe.
Yeah.
That's really good. So kind of moving forward, looking forward, what are some of your goals for maybe the next 5-10 years? Like what are some goals or aspirations you have, both personally, but also professionally?
So personally, I have a lot of my goals right now are climbing oriented, just because that's kind of what occupies most of my exercise routine. And so I have certain things that I want to be able to climb. They're going to make sense if I explain them. But they're just basically, I want to get stronger, essentially, climb harder things. And then professionally, I want to learn to put myself in a position where I can work with other people who are talented. I've always been kind of a loner, and I'll do everything myself. I'm a terrible micromanager. I don't do well with employees. And so maybe it doesn't necessarily mean working with employees down the road, but partnering up with other people who are really good at the marketing and distribution side, and opening the doors to channels where you can reach more people. And that's a huge goal right now. So I'm working on some things right now and that are pretty promising, but they may or may not come to fruition. But it feels good to at least, like you said, check the ego and approach people and say, hey, what do you think about working together? If it works out, great. If it doesn't, in the past, I would have probably taken it as a personal slight. But now it's just like, hey, maybe it's not a good fit. But at least I'm going to start reaching out and exploring the opportunity to work more. I feel like you can produce and just build a bigger empire, so to speak, when you have more than just yourself involved. So.
Yeah. No, so Jesse Itzler is one of my favorite, I feel like in our soul, we're similar. I'm curious, he's a Virgo, but we're very different. However, he talks a ton about if you want more business, if you want to grow, talk to more people, just period. If you want to grow in life, you need to grow in your relationships. You have to talk to more people. You have to, and not necessarily on a superficial level, that doesn't necessarily mean go to all the parties and do that, but actually connect with people on a real level.
Sure. And
then that's how you can grow, the main way that you grow.
Yeah, and it's hard to connect with people. I'm very, very guilty of this, especially all artists are so narcissistic and introspective, and we think that we think so deeply about the world, and everybody else is just skimming the surface. And eventually I had to look at myself and be like, I don't want to cuss on here, but you're an a-hole, Bobby. It's that's a terrible way to think that everybody else is, because what they talk about is probably very real to them. Mm-hmm. And so I think the bottom line is that I need to work on how well I care about what other people have to talk about. And that's on me. And so talking with people for me is hard because I'd rather be out doing something or whatever. But learning to ask questions and then care about people's responses and not just dismiss them as shallow or not worthy of my attention. And I think that's one of the things that has been a huge hindrance to me in the past is you expect everybody to someday they're going to understand my genius. And it's just complete BS. It's nope, I'm just sitting here in a hole. And that's kind of an excuse for me to shell up and not have to go out and be vulnerable and connect and listen to other people. So that's something I definitely need to work on.
No, I attribute a good chunk of our growth to Kelly because she taught me the idea of empathy, because I'm I'm very task oriented. So when I'm going through my process, I'm looking to check boxes, but I'm a terrible listener, and I think for me, once I began to better listen and again, just understand, that may not be my story. I may not always agree in all the things, but my opinion doesn't really count in this moment.
Yeah.
I just need to be willing and, ready, willing, and able to listen. People feel like they're heard. And I think that's a lot of what builds the connection. Where I overthink things. I think, I've got to go and do all these hundreds of things to connect with somebody. And it's no, really, I just have to listen when they're talking. And then they feel valued. And it's amazing, how close people feel when you just give them that little bit of attention. It's bananas to me. And that's been one of the biggest lessons over the last 5 years or so working with Kelly is just take the time to listen And once people feel like they're heard, then, you know, that is the budding of the relationship.
Yeah, and Kelly is so good at
Oh, my
that.
goodness. Drives
So-
me nuts sometimes. I'm
I
like,
know.
stop listening. Like, we have to go.
She makes like lifelong loyal friends in the most bizarre places.
Center seat on Southwest Airplane.
Yeah,
I put my headphones on with no music because I don't want to talk to somebody. And she's over there getting, you know, free gift cards to the guy's restaurant because they're now best friends after a 50-minute flight.
That was a revolutionary thing in the gallery too. Like for the longest time, I thought when people come into the gallery, it's like their purpose is to buy the art, and it's not what it is at all. It's the purpose of them coming into when they come into the gallery, it's about them. It's not about me. You know, they're coming in with bringing in a whole world of experience and different reasons why they will or will not connect with the work. And it's my job to really care and get to the bottom of what's valuable to them and make the experience about them. And if it doesn't work out that they buy, if it's not a good fit for whatever reason, then that's totally fine. I can't take that personally. But once I understood that, like, this is not about me, this is about them. Because the artist is silent without the patron, however you want to slice it. We don't have a voice if people aren't buying the work. So once I learned to get past, again, ego and start caring about people, it revolutionized how I related to people in the gallery. So
that's awesome.
Okay, so those are all my questions. We have a speed round.
Okay.
So it's just like
I'm so
favorite.
terrible at these. I'm like way too much of an overthinker for a speed round.
Speedish round.
Yeah, as speedy as you could go.
Okay.
Favorite business or mindfulness book?
Oh, gosh.
Or top 2 or 3.
Probably Leading an Inspired Life or Think and Grow Rich.
Okay.
Those are awesome.
Did you recommend those?
Those are just books that Bobby actually recommended, the Jim Rohn book, right?
Is that the Leading the Inspired Life? I'm terrible with the authors.
Yeah, no, that book is amazing.
Yeah, Outwitting the Devil was a good one too.
Yeah.
They kind of revolutionized how I thought of the world.
That was great.
I feel like mindfulness, even like at the conference that we went to, I would say 70% of everything they said is simply like figure out your mindset and then the rest will follow.
Yep.
The other 30% was like tangible, do these things. But if you don't have the right mindset, it's useless anyway. Favorite non-work related book?
The Zen of Climbing. It's a good one. I'm reading it right now. I'm almost done with it.
Best season?
Fall.
Why?
Because.
It's not 140 degrees
Because it
anymore.
is.
Pumpkin spice latte season?
Yes.
Yes.
I love pumpkin spice latte season. I'm not going to lie.
Favorite movie?
Oh, man, that's way too hard. Oh, gosh. Gladiator's up there.
Yeah, that's good.
Titanic. I watched it like 3 nights in a row last week.
The whole thing?
Yeah.
That's a long movie.
So good. I have a lot of favorite movies. Depends on the season.
Okay.
Bobby's ability to recall like lines from movies that came out like 30 years ago, I think is just
Yeah, I love
that is a
them,
gift
man.
right there, man.
People who can write those scripts, those people are amazing.
Best way to wind down after a stressful week?
Exercise or glass of wine.
Sweet or salty?
Both. Sweet and salty. Like a chocolate chip cookie with salt on it.
Yes. Beach or mountains?
Mountains, probably.
Okay. And
That's
that's
very close.
what we have.
All right, let's get some stories in here, Bobby. No,
So what?
share some stories. No, I think one of the coolest parts of my friendship with you over the last few years, you know, we got super close during, you know, the shutdown and everything. But, you know, I've talked about it a few times. Your just sheer determination to will a result, man, I think is absolutely incredible. And to see that impact on your family with your wife and with Isley, and just how you do such a phenomenal job of leading by example, man. I'm super proud to just call you a friend, but to just see the evolution of your success and to see things that were tangible results, like you said, as far as, you know, great results in the gallery, but you always seem to stay very centered. You never deviate from the routine of making sure that you're getting the workout in, you know, whether it's at the mountaintop or the valley, man. And I just, when you talk about, you know, live inspired, like you just embody that, man. And I just think that is one of the coolest things, just to see in a human, and to have that human in my inner circle is just an incredible blessing, man. So just thanks for sharing some time today, man. That was awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you guys for having me.
coming. Of course.